think Delia's on her way, so
Yeah.
we'll start because I want to be sensitive.
Twisty out here, Joe. I feel
That's
like I'm
perfect.
at
I
home.
mean, come on now.
Sorry,
I'd like
I
feel like you're home.
Why? We are the invisible minority.
Yeah, I think we've.
Okay, we'll have to wait here.
I used to live in
Yeah.
city of San Francisco, but my
I shouldn't touch anything. That's what I should not do.
Don't
Good morning.
anything.
Good morning, and thanks. Good morning. Thanks to everyone for being here, and I want to thank my co-chairs, Representative Kevin Mullin of California, Representative Ramirez of Illinois, and last but certainly not least, Nikema Williams, my friend from Georgia, for joining us. Also want to thank other members of our task force who are here, Representative Dave Min, Suhan Subramaniam, and Seth Magaziner, who was here momentarily. We are so grateful to them for their leadership, for their incredible work, and looking forward to our work together as the Anti-Corruption and Democracy Reform Task Force and the launch of that today. I also want to thank our guests, Virginia K. Solomon, who's the president and CEO of Common Cause, and Robert Weissman, the co-president of Public Citizen. Both are incredibly valued partners in this effort as we fight for a stronger, more just democracy. And today we are here to launch the Anti-Corruption and Democracy Reform Task Force. In my view, there is nothing more important in this moment than protecting American democracy and rooting out the corruption that has become endemic in our system, especially under this administration. And I just use as a point of reference behind me, Republicans are about to try to memorialize through a resolution the most corrupt tax bill in American history, which they passed last year, which puts billions of dollars in the hands of billionaires through tax breaks. So I think the contrast could not be more telling. We find ourselves at a moment where democracy's defenses are under attack.
That's right.
The American people have stopped believing that government is working on their behalf. They no longer feel we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. They no longer trust our government, no longer trust that public service is done for public good. And can we blame them? At every turn, the Trump administration is destroying our institutions and shattering norms. It happens not on a daily basis, it happens on an hourly basis. And Donald Trump is personally profiting off the presidency while imposing costs on the American people. Something that our founders would have found so reprehensible, having a president of the United States benefit financially and otherwise from his service. And the corruption is not free. You're the ones, Americans, who are paying for it. This cannot and will not stand. This task force will bring members together to take a hard look at the root causes of corruption and create a stronger, more unified democracy that works for every single American. This includes each branch of government, ensuring no president, vice president, cabinet secretary, member of Congress, or justice of the Supreme Court puts profits over people or power over democracy. This also includes getting dark money out of our elections and strengthening our democracy so that government works for you, not the wealthy donors. I think it's telling, if you remember in that rotunda behind us on Inauguration Day, the president sitting with 6 billionaires lined up behind him, and the American people want to know, why are they not first? Why are the billionaires first and not them?
That's right.
The Anti-Corruption and Democracy Reform Task Force will work to do the following things: root out corruption in the executive branch. Americans are paying the cost for this corruption every day with higher gasoline prices, higher food prices, unaffordable health care, rising home prices. The cost of child care is so difficult for average families to combat, all while Trump administration pushes policies that benefit only the president and the richest of his allies. We'll critically examine Congress itself and ways to reform the legislative branch. We are not above having a look at how we root out corruption in the legislative branch and end self-dealing and strengthen accountability in the judicial branch, which I think every American wants to have, and improve our elections and strengthen our democracy. We should be expanding access to the ballot, bolstering election security, and supporting our state and local election officials who work so hard with the sacred trust that they've been given to make sure elections are safe and secure in America, not sowing unfounded doubts about democracy, which the president and his allies do every single day. The president can't get over his loss in 2020. He's got the emotional maturity of a 5-year-old. And in doing that, in dealing with his demons, he is tearing down democracy everywhere, trying to do everything he can to deny access to the ballot for all Americans. 80 million people who are voting eligible age, American citizens, did not vote in the last presidential election. If that isn't a sign that we've got to do better to ensure access for democracy for all Americans, I don't know what is. Our government is in a crisis, and together we will eliminate the systematic causes of corruption and create a stronger, more unified democracy that works for all Americans. Our government is in a crisis of public trust, and the Trump administration has taken every opportunity to dismantle key institutions and federal programs that work for the American people. So Congress must do something to end this Republican culture of corruption in Washington. Leader Jeffries has made anti-corruption a key pillar of our Democratic agenda. That's why he asked me to develop a comprehensive anti-corruption agenda for House Democrats, and this task force is an important, indelible part and component of that effort. I want to thank my colleagues and co-chairs for joining me in this critical endeavor. We need real change, and we are determined to find the best path forward. With that, I'd like to ask Task Force Co-Chair Kevin Mullin to come up and say a few words.
Thank you so much, Ranking Member Morelle. Very much looking forward to working with you and the other task force co-chairs. I am Congressmember Kevin Mullin from California's 15th Congressional District. I grew up in South San Francisco, where my father was a 33-year high school government teacher and civics teacher. He proudly taught his students and me that our democracy doesn't exist on its own. It's something that each of us as Americans must defend and uphold. All of us are heirs to a 250-year-old political system, and I do not say this lightly, but now we are at a DEFCON 1 moment for our democracy. Our America, as we know it, is facing existential threats, and the attacks are coming from the highest level. President Trump and his Republican majority, who are ceding power to the most corrupt presidential administration in our 250-year history. We've seen Trump sell out American innovation to foreign adversaries and exploit his position for personal financial gain to enrich his family with crypto. He doesn't work for the American people. He works for the highest bidder. He's unilaterally bolstering the stocks of companies that have donated to him, and he's placing undue influence on the market. And now Trump is saying he'd offer blanket pardons to anyone who has come within 200 feet of the Oval Office, outright encouraging illegal behavior. It's corrupt, it's undemocratic, and it is shamefully un-American. All the while, Trump and Republicans have done nothing to help working families or address our affordability challenges. And now, because they know many Americans are fed up with their failed policies, they're trying to make it harder for U.S. citizens to vote. Free and fair elections and the ability to cast a ballot are the most fundamental tenets of a democracy. When people have safe and secure opportunities to vote and the process is made easier, we have a healthier and more inclusive democracy. I spent 10 years in the California State Legislature before being elected to Congress, and one of my proudest accomplishments was to pass a bill that made my home county the first in the state to pilot an all-mail ballot election. A nonpartisan study of the pilot proved the efficacy of voting by mail with increased voter engagement across all demographics, and it led the way for California to hold its first all-mail ballot election in 2020. Now, upwards of 80 to 90% of California voters cast their ballot by mail, and nearly 1 in 3 Americans across the country vote by mail. Even President Trump himself voted by mail, all the while threatening to take this method of voting away from regular Americans. We know there are extensive safeguards built into the process, like signature verification for mailed ballots and a strict chain of custody system to ensure no fraud. Research has shown our elections are safe and secure, but the fear tactics and voter suppression efforts we have seen are simply because President Trump and Republicans know their policies are wildly unpopular. Why is it that Trump only thinks elections are rigged when he loses? He wasn't claiming fraud in 2024 when he won. It's illogical and it's corrupt. We're now facing voter suppression efforts like the SAVE Act, Trump's executive order to effectively ban mail-in voting, and threats to send ICE to the polls. The American public deserves and needs assurances now, and they deserve to have confidence at all levels of government, from the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, to their ability to lawfully cast a ballot free from political interference. That's why I'm so proud to join Ranking Member Morelle, co-chairs Williams and Ramirez, our fellow task force members, to weed out corruption in our government and strengthen our democracy. And now it's my honor to hand the mic over to Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, who's been a tireless fighter on behalf of our democracy. Congresswoman.
Good morning. Buenos dias. I'm Congresswoman Delia Catalina Ramirez, and I'm the proud representative of the mighty, mighty 3rd Congressional District in Illinois, a district that is fed up with this administration's violence against our community and the blatant corruption that you and I see every single day. Yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance said, "I think people don't have an idea how bad the corruption is in Washington, D.C." He said that. J.D.,
Look in the mirror.
look in the mirror. And let me tell you that the people in my district are well aware of the corruption in Washington, D.C. They know that corruption is written all over the Trump-Vance authoritarian administration because corruption is a tool for authoritarians to consolidate power and reward their loyalists. And my constituents see that corruption every single day. Many Americans are all too clear that we are well past democratic backsliding. They know that they're living in a full-on fascist takeover by the Trump-Vance regime. We are facing multi-front struggles that threaten the very foundations of our own democracies. How do you see it? From big, unaccountable money in politics buying representation, to the authoritarians' attempts to erode free and fair elections, to the spreading of this white nationalist terror to disenfranchise black, brown, and low-income voters, and the self-enrichment of public officials and campaign donors with your taxpayer money. Our democracy, in fact, is under attack. You see, our democracy is weaker when the voices of working people are buried in the volume of ads millions of dollars can buy. In Illinois, our communities were flooded with over $35 million in dark money spending, including from Republican donors trying to buy Democratic primaries and silence our communities. People on the ground are sick and tired of super PACs, shell PACs, billionaires, mega corporations buying undue influence in our politics and our seats in our elections. Our communities are also tired of being terrorized by Trump's national paramilitary force. It's called ICE. Today, as Trump deploys ICE at his whim, we are collectively confronting the threat of agents with guns at polling places. Would you ever have imagined that we would be living with that fear? His threat harkens back to dark days and reflects tactics that have always been used to try to intimidate black and brown voters and all those who seek change in the ballot box and try to keep them from exercising their voting rights. At the same time, Republicans in Congress are working to disenfranchise millions of Americans by passing legislation like Save America Act, or what I call Save Their Ass Act, given the unpopularity of their policies. And as they try to disenfranchise us, they expect we look the other way, as President Trump and his family have approximately made $4 billion off the presidency since returning to office. Let me repeat that. They've made more than $4 billion since he returned to presidency. And his campaign donors have padded their pockets with record high earnings by profiting from our pain. But the administration tactics are not new, and we know that we can't just fight back in the streets. We have to fight back in the courts and in Congress. And it is why I am so proud to join my colleagues today in launching the Anti-Corruption and Democracy Reform Task Force. Because we understand that we have an obligation to repair and expand our democracy. We have an obligation to be more inclusive, more representative, and more accountable to the people. We must get money out of politics. We must root out corruption anywhere that it is, whether J.D. Vance sees it or thinks that people see it or not. Because it is our responsibility to make sure that we call out corruption, whether it's in the White House, the Supreme Court, or the House of Congress. It is up to us to step into this work, to roll up our sleeves like I have them right now, and to make it happen through cooperation, through organizing and solidarity. That is what democracy looks like. because democracy is too delicate, too precious, too significant to leave it in the hands of those who don't value it. The stakes are too high, but our resolve is greater than the risk. Because cynicism, fear, and hate won't usher a thriving future we collectively deserve into reality or realize a world full of possibilities. The only thing that does that is hope, is love, is courage, and the work that we will do through this anti-corruption task force. With that said, I want to introduce to you my colleague who knows this work so well, my colleague who has spent her life doing this work, and that is Congresswoman Nikema Williams.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's okay to have a little call and response. I'm Southern, y'all. Good morning.
Good morning.
Y'all, I am Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and I proudly represent Georgia's fighting 5th Congressional District, where we are no strangers to fighting against this administration and all of their corruptive tactics that are influencing our democracy at this time. This is one of the most corrupt administrations in our country's history, full stop. And that corruption is bleeding into our elections. The words nationalize elections, let that sink in. Nationalized elections should not be coming out of United States President's mouth. The words we shouldn't even have an election should not be spoken by a United States President. No part of this has been normal or should be treated as normal. Donald Trump sent Tulsi Gabbard to Fulton County, my home county, to raid a local elections office based on debunked election fraud conspiracies. Then Trump loyalist Steve Bannon started calling for ICE at polling locations, and we know exactly where they will start. It's clear the next strategy in voter suppression is in fact intimidation. When we're being threatened by masked men with guns at our polling locations, that's what I call Jim Crow 2.0, because it wasn't that long ago, back in Alabama, back in the South, back in Georgia, where we saw these very things by local law enforcement officers. We've been here before. They might not be using hoses this time, and we might not be counting jelly beans in a jar, but the same corrupt scheme to keep us from voting is the same as it was then as it is now. Intimidation and fear-mongering are the symptoms. Corruption is the diagnosis. This moment calls for a unified front, transparent action, and coordinated fights in Congress, in the courts, and in our communities. That's what the Anti-Corruption Strengthening Democracy Task Force is prepared to do. Through congressional collaboration, working with other leading voices in the field, and convening important and informed conversations, this task force will establish our legislative response to this corrupt White House. The American people are demanding accountability. From unnecessary and expensive wars to White House ballroom construction to attacks on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to attempts to silence voters at the ballot box. The vast corruption spewing from this administration is as visible as ever. It's our reaction that will define this moment. My friend, my mentor, and my predecessor, the late Congressman John Lewis, told us a democracy cannot thrive where power remains unchecked and justice is reserved for a select few. Peace cannot exist where justice is not served. The Anti-Corruption Task Force will be a check on Donald Trump's corruption, and I'm proud to serve as a co-chair of this task force as we build from today and make sure that the people's ballot box is rightfully protected from this corruption. Thank you so much.
Thank you to each of our co-chairs and all the members of the task force for their comments. But we cannot do this alone. As talented as this group of members, we have partners who are civil society partners, people who are doing such amazing work. And I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Virginia K. Solomon, from President and CEO of Common Cause, who is a tremendous partner and a great friend. Ask her to say a few words. Virginia.
Good afternoon. Good morning, actually. Good morning. My name is Virginia K. Solomon. I'm the president and CEO of Common Cause, and I'm here representing our more than 1 million members across the political spectrum who reside in every single congressional district throughout this country. I want to thank Ranking Member Morelle, my friend, for his leadership on the House Admin Committee and for launching this critical task force alongside all of the amazing and dedicated leaders here. Today's tax day, in case we've all forgotten, which for millions of Americans represents our commitment to one another. That is what we pour into our national budget. We pay into the system because we expect a government that provides safe roads, good schools, and a fair shot for everyone. But right now, it feels like those in power aren't fulfilling their end of the bargain. People are working twice as hard to get by, while a handful of billionaires and people in this administration, special interest groups, and their friends use the government as their personal checkbook. Every time a politician helps a special interest rig the rules, it takes more money directly out of the American people's pockets. We saw this with the billionaire budget that slashed aid for families while handing out massive tax breaks to the ultra-rich. And corruption, it has a real cost. It is the primary driver of the affordability crisis that we are facing. It creates hidden taxes on every working family in our country. When the system's rigged for those on the top, things like health care and groceries and housing and gas get more expensive for the rest of us. And we shouldn't have to choose between a government that works and a life we can afford. The budget that gets put forward is a moral document and a statement on how we see the American people, whether or not we value every single person in this country. And for far too long, we relied on politicians to do the right thing. We've learned the hard way that we need more than just good intentions. We need hard guardrails to stop the self-dealing all across government, in the executive branch, our courts, and even here in Congress. This isn't about left or right. I want to be really clear. For organizations like ours, it is not about what side of the political aisle you fall on. People across the country, whether you are red, blue, purple state, we're finding ourselves living lives that are much more difficult than they were just a few years ago. And it's unfair at the end of the day that rules like banning a stock trade in Congress or stopping a president from cashing in are being blocked by partisan actors on another side of the aisle. And this task force, it is a critical step towards rooting out corruption and making government work for the people again. Whether it's banning those stock trades or making sure that the president can't give himself a $10 million paycheck just because he feels like it, because there's some administrative loophole that allows for it, it still doesn't change the fact that it's corruption. So the launch of this task force, it proves that when we organize, we win. We are moving now, not waiting for the next election to assure if our government finally puts people over profits and democracy over billionaires. Thank you so much, and I'll hand this back now to Representative Morelle.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask Robert Weissman, the co-president of Public Citizen, to come forward. I'm so grateful for his efforts and Public Citizen for all the work they do and for their partnership. Robert?
Corruption is a defining feature of the Trump presidency, and it is hurting every single American. Corruption means a lead AI investor gets installed in the White House to make policy regarding big tech and AI and lets the big tech companies make gazillion dollars in profits and launch dangerous AI technologies without safeguards, threatening jobs, the environment, and putting our children at risk. Corruption means the president accepts $400 million gifts from foreign countries and engages in deals worth tens of billions of dollars with other foreign countries, and that drives our foreign policy, including the decision to engage in and extend illegal, unconstitutional, and dangerous wars. Corruption means the Justice Department doesn't enforce the antitrust laws against those that Donald Trump favors. It means we have higher ticket prices for concerts and media consolidation that is going to threaten the very foundations of our democracy. And corruption means that Republicans and Donald Trump conjure up imaginary crises of fraud in social service programs committed by immigrants and poor people, while that same president, in fact, pardons fraudsters at an epic and unprecedented level, and his administration shuts down the most important anti-fraud agency in government, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So corruption is a defining feature of authoritarians and of this authoritarian administration, and it will be vital for this anti-corruption task force to take on and redress and remedy and prevent from ever happening again the corruption of Donald Trump. But the corruption in Washington is not just the corruption of Washington, D.C. It's systemic, too, with too much power for lobbyists, too much power for big money in our elections, and it will be vital that this anti-corruption and pro-democracy task force take on and address those issues as well, which I know it will do under the awesome leadership that we've heard today from Representatives Morelle and Williams and Mullin and Ramirez. I just want to say last, to echo what Virginia said, this is a Democrats' task force, but there's nothing democratic about the anti-corruption agenda. Republicans and Democrats and unaffiliated voters all understand and feel passionately about the problem of corruption in Washington, D.C. They are demanding answers. Bizarrely, it's why many of them voted for Donald Trump in the first place. But now is the time to deliver true solutions and get them enacted into law. And when we do finally get this package developed and across the finish line and enacted into law, it should be with the support of every member of Congress without regard to party.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Robert. And before I close and thank all of my colleagues and partners here, I want to thank Speaker Johnson, because only the completely tone-deaf House Republicans would gather together to celebrate a fiscally and morally bankrupt tax break for billionaires a year after it's happened, to continue to celebrate it, because they're not listening to what's going on in America. They're not hearing the voice of Americans who are tired of high costs, who are tired of a government that has turned their back on the interests of the American people. So I want to thank Speaker Johnson for continuing to be completely and utterly tone deaf to the needs of the American people. But I also, again, just want to thank my co-chairs and all the members who have agreed to join this task force, and certainly our partners, Virginia K. Solomon and the Common Cause and Robert Weissman and Public Citizen, for being here. And I want to thank you all. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them. Yeah. Yeah. Well, certainly this began in part by Leader Jeffries giving me a responsibility to come up with this anti-corruption and democracy reform agenda. I thought it was fitting to reach out to members, which is why I asked my co-chairs to serve and all the members of the task force. We are committed to this. We do want it to be bipartisan. We will continue to offer opportunities for our friends across the aisle to join with us to talk about constructive ways we can repair this democracy and root out the corruption that's become so endemic in the Trump administration. Sadly, they have not heeded our call, but we'll continue to have an open door and to talk to them about ways to do it. But we're also not going to wait. What we've seen is how they are completely willing to subject themselves to Donald Trump, how they are complicit in this. The House Republicans continue to follow the president's lead about condemning the results of the 2020 election, continuing to further the lies about fraud in our elections, and they have continued to be complicit. So yes, we want a bipartisan approach. We'll always have always offer them the opportunity to work with us, but with them or without them, we're going to reform this government, and we're going to make America proud of its government once again. Great. Thank you all so much for being here.